The Northman by Robert Eggers. One of my favorite he's established directors. If you make one film I love, you're gonna be someone I keep an eye on. If you make two films I love, I'm gonna consider myself a fan. If you make 3 films I consider great, then you're in contention for one of my favorite working directors, and Robert Eggers has narrowly earned that slot for me. And I say it like that because I do feel, just getting this out of the way, The Northman is the weakest of his big 3 films, but it's still damn good. For those of you who have not seen The Lighthouse or Villianous, I highly, highly recommend them, especially if you have seen The Northman and you liked it. I won't be getting into spoilers here for any of these movies, but I just want to talk about what I feel The Northman accomplished. Getting into a brief overview of what the story is established in even just the trailer, you have a young child whose father is murdered and mother taken by some betrayal. And he grows up with the slogan, the mantra, repeated internally, it seems forever.
I will avenge you, father. I will save you, mother. I will kill you. Name that sounds like you're very congested.
I'm gonna be honest, I struggled with nearly every name in this movie because dyslexia, I guess. I'm not entirely sure why. And what could be just a very straightforward revenge story ends up taking some fascinating twists and turns, and at the end of the day has a lot to say about obsession, internal conflict, purpose, destiny, family. And something that I think already makes The Northman stand out from so many other revenge stories is it does not elevate its protagonist as better than those around, and there's kind of this moral issue, especially in the latter half of the story, where you don't really find yourself feeling like anyone here is the good guy. There's not really a good versus bad. There is brutal seeking revenge on awful. And I feel like that's where Alexander Skarsgård's performance is just elevated and where Robert Eggers' direction really shined. Robert Eggers, for those of you who are not aware, is a director who is very devoted to crafting tone and just immersing you as an audience member as deeply as he can through long takes and elaborate sets into the story he is telling. And we've kind of seen that grow through these last 3 big movies from him, where Villianous was kind of just located around a very historically accurately built home, and then we see it move to Lighthouse, where we have this huge structure. We move a bit around that, but it's really just, again, located in this one space. And then The Northman feels like he was finally given a budget to have that devotion to realism on a grander scale. We move from battles to sieges from all kinds of locations, and then we kind of narrow in on what kind of feels like a prison for our antagonist as our protagonist begins to plot their revenge. And unfortunately, apparently the box office of the movie has not been outstanding. I'm hoping Robert Eggers gets more opportunities like this. I've long said that he would be the person to do a Wolverine origin reboot for the MCU if MCU would let him go as balls to the wall psychological horror as he'd want, but that will never happen and he would never agree to do it, so a boy could dream. Now, I briefly touched on Alexander Skarsgård's performance here, and I want to dive more into that, because as an actor, if you're kind of handed a brute character, it's hard to find range within that, and it was really impressive to see Alexander Skarsgård take his hulking form for this movie, which he is the biggest I've ever seen him by a lot, and at times almost feel cowed. There's a range to his physicality that you rarely see in such large performances, and I mean that literally. He is big, and it's a difficult acting feat to make yourself feel small on the screen when you have such a presence. And part of the way that's accomplished is Robert Eggers' kind of play with the fantastical. I originally wasn't going to talk about this movie on the channel because I didn't think it was a fantasy film when I went in to see it, and then I sat down and it absolutely is. There is very strong fantastical elements throughout the entire narrative, some of which you could kind of take as being metaphorical to represent what's going on inside the character, and others that seem pretty overtly like, no, there is magic happening. I think there's some people who could make the case that all of it is more metaphorical and you shouldn't take it as literal, but I disagree to an extent, although it does seem to find a nice balance. I'll talk about more in that in a spoiler section at the end of the video, or I'm actually gonna be sitting down with my girlfriend Kayla, and we're gonna be going ahead and just doing a long form spoiler discussion after about the halfway point, I imagine. And I can't talk about acting without talking about Anya Taylor-Joy, Nicole Kidman, and Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe is not the largest part of this movie, but when he is on screen, he's Willem fucking Dafoe. And I maintain that he is probably my favorite underappreciated actor. I find nearly every single movie I have seen him appear in that he just steals the show with an all new take on a very interesting type of character. And not getting too much into it, if you want to see Willem Dafoe enjoy bodily functions, The Northman is where it's at. Anya Taylor-Joy as well provides this kind of ethereal presence with her ability to just totally utilize those big eyes of hers to enamor the viewer. She is just kind of that beautiful presence in every single thing she does, where she can just feel otherworldly while also extremely down to earth. And also the magical element she lends to this film as well, really just, I found brilliant. This is one of the better balanced films I have watched in a while. Now, I do have criticisms I'm going to get to in a minute, but overall, if you're someone who enjoys high effort filmmaking, there's not really any moment within The Northman that doesn't feel like it is artists fully realizing their craft. And it was fascinating to see the choice within the narrative, because this is based off of a real myth, apparently, that actually was eventually the inspiration for Hamlet. Christianity is treated as a superstition within the Northman, and meanwhile Norse mythology is treated as fact. And the way that was used was delicious and original, and I think this movie wouldn't have worked without it. Having Bjork show up for a moment and just be this spiritual presence, the visuals of Valhalla and the Valkyrie were just
fucking delicious.
And it made me want to watch like a whole other hour of this movie where all those concepts were just explored. I'm glad they weren't, because I'd actually rather just have those hooks to pull me along and make me wonder more. But there is that part of me that's just like, make it Lord of the Rings length, go for another hour. Now, my issue does come in a bit with the story and pacing, because while I don't think there should have been just a whole other hour devoted to the mythology and fleshing out all the magic systems, I'm aware I'm just a bit partial to that, and it wouldn't have made it a better movie. There were certain scenes that just felt like a studio note came in that's like, you gotta keep the runtime down, get this exposition delivered faster, and it was. And it even ended up affecting the dialogue in a couple of scenes, where I would go as far as to say it made certain characters break their established character. Like Alexander Skarsgård's performance is a brute who is pretty quiet, yet at certain times he's made to monologue alone on a rooftop, and even the way he's talking doesn't seem as immersed in that older speech they're devoted to for a lot of the movie. And so I was just kind of going, why is this happening the way it is? And I haven't read about this, I don't know for sure, but I would bet money Robert Eggers was told this is a high budget project and we need you to keep the runtime down so we can get more showings in theaters. It just really felt that way to me. I wanted this to be slower by about 15 to 20 minutes, which is ironic because I've seen some people say this movie is slow, and I'm sorry, how? This movie is just boom, 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 boom to the very, very end. And we'll talk about, again, the ending in that spoiler-filled section where I'm going to sit down with Kayla to discuss our experience watching this. But I think the climax of this movie was over-the-top, bombastic, just this total devotion to embracing the over-the-top nature of the mythology they've established and the culture that is permeating underneath the story that allows so much of this to happen. I loved it. I wouldn't have changed a thing. A friend of mine who I talked to about this movie said he thought it was too much. It pulled him out of it. Like, it just felt like they were trying to go for the most dramatic thing possible, but that's not a bad thing in my book. If you earn it, you earn it. And my God, The Northman earned it. What's interesting is if you had asked me what I thought of this movie right when I left the theater, I would have probably given it about a 7. I thought it was really good, but by no means Robert Eggers' best. But as I've sat on it longer, I have enjoyed it more. And there is one performance in particular that single-handedly elevates this movie to easily earn that 8 spot for me. I can't talk about it too much, but it's actually Nicole Kidman's performance. Holy crap, is she able at a certain point in the story to flip on a dime and just become this presence in front of the camera. And it ties into a lot of what I said about certain things earlier on. She is someone who I have a whole new appreciation for, and unfortunately I haven't watched too many of her movies, so this just really surprised me. Nicole Kidman hype all the way. But at the end of the day, I think this is a fantastic film that is what so many people who are movie fans have been craving. It's original, it's high effort, it has a very distinct atmosphere and vision. It's just a result of a talented director going nuts, and if you want more movies like this being made, go see it once, go see it twice, and don't buy any snacks at the podium, because I got charged $30 for a water, a popcorn, and a slushie. Maybe don't go see it in the theaters. Now I get why theaters are struggling. If they're doing that to people, what? Yeah, I'm gonna stick by my solid 8 rating, and right now, we're gonna transition into Kayla and I talking about The Northman. Completely spoiler-filled, so if you haven't seen the movie, get on out of here. And you have, stick around for the discussion. Bye!
Ta!
Spoiler warning for The Northman. We are gonna be going ahead and talking about every little detail, every choice, everything that happened within The Northman. And I have a question to ask you right away, because I originally, when we left the theater with this movie, was sitting at like a 7, but over time, I have actually come to like it more. For full disclosure, we actually already recorded a review. I lost that footage as well as the Please Dear God Don't Be a Bum. So this is a re-recording. I'm more positive now, the more I've sat on it. I'm actually singing about a solid 8.
Interesting.
How have you aged with the film? Is it a fine wine, a stinky cheese, or a moldy grape?
No, I'd say I still stick at my solid 7 for me. There are still some aspects to it that I stand by when we previously recorded. The reason I sit at a 7 versus an 8 is I still struggle to connect with any of the characters going in the story. And for me, that's a really big thing. But I will say, for the first time, my biggest thought as I was going through this was, I just don't care enough about these characters. Like, we didn't get to know them. My exact words were, I felt as if I entered in the middle of an episode rather than the start.
I think you're completely right. You're 100% right. This movie does not invest you emotionally because they're all kind of pieces of shit. Like, Alexander Skarsgård at one point is watching a building full of innocent people burn, and he's just like, that sucks, and moves on. So you're not exactly like, oh, he's the hero I want to be behind. And I think the reason I'm definitely making excuses for the movie at this point, but my brain is almost categorizing this like as like a Greek tale. Like, you're not supposed to relate to Zeus, right? But you still enjoy that story. My brain is pushing this movie into that territory so I can just excuse it because I liked it so much otherwise. The one relationship I did really start connecting to enough to make me actually have one emotional investment was the dynamic between Anya Taylor-Joy and Alexander Skarsgård. I remember no one's name. They're all just nasally noises. Yeah, exactly. They actually had like a really cool, like, not buddy cop. What's the opposite? What's the antithesis of buddy cop? Buddy chaos causers? Like, I don't know what to call it. But I really liked how they like were scheming together, and they didn't have I wouldn't call it a believable romance. I would call it a believable partnership through circumstance.
See,
and his strength with her cunning, because you could feel her planning and her magics, and his execution of it was really cool. And I would have watched like a whole season of just them like mustache twirling scheming.
The only thing I have to say about that, and I agree, is because they do have a wonderful camaraderie between them as the movie goes on. But again, the part that I struggled with is Anya Taylor-Joy's introduction to meeting Alexander Skarsgård's character, and how rapidly they suddenly just devise this plan and become so close. I didn't feel that part, while it felt natural towards the middle and the end, their you know, I would say compassion towards each other's circumstances and understanding. I didn't feel that we got to see the full development of their quote-unquote friendship. It was just these jump cuts of them deciding to do things together based on, I hate this person too, let's do it together. And then all of a sudden there's like
them high-fiving.
And then all of a sudden there's like this romance. At a whole, I feel somebody should have taken one more glance through this script and been like, yes, it is a fantastic story. There's a lot of action and there's a lot of dramatic scenes, which I will get to. The cinematography is outstanding. But the characters themselves, do we care? And for me, that was the one part that was lacking.
So I agree a lot with what you're saying, and tell me if I'm just justifying the film here, but I almost liked that there wasn't like an actual romance between them, and instead it felt kind of like two villains planning and being like, I don't necessarily love you, but I'm getting off on what we're doing, so let's go bang in the woods and come back and fuck up this dude's life. I kind of like that I didn't get like a really good friendship. It just felt like these two people are filled with anger. Anya Taylor-Joy, because of her situation in society, and what's his actual name?
I don't remember.
Nasally noise because of what happened to him. I actually think I would have liked it less if it tried to add real romance angles.
I was going to say, don't misinterpret this, because I don't necessarily need a full-on dramatic, you know, Helen of Troy romance here going on. What I wanted was just...
Sorry, I just imagine him bringing her flowers like, hey, I know how we mutilated those guys' bodies and turned them into a horse, but here.
Like, I'm just asking for a little bit more development at the front.
So let's go ahead and talk about that cinematography, because I held back on talking about it in my spoiler-free section because I know you...
That's my scene.
I think what we said in the car ride back, correct me if I'm wrong, is this is now the best advertisement for Greenland ever. Iceland, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, it is... It looks like, I want to remember what I said in our first recording. It looks like it could be presented as an alien world with just a couple touches. It's so different looking and gorgeous. I loved it.
What I really liked was the play of color grading throughout the film. So in the beginning, you're really given the sense of how harsh, how unhappy, how miserable of a place he's growing up with, because it's so gray and dark and foreboding.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the only color we really get are the flames that are either surrounding crazy Willem Dafoe or flames that of the burning village. But then as you go to meet Anya Taylor-Joy's character, who's supposed to represent this sort of hopeful path that he could take, there is suddenly this lightening of the film and a lot of green that's introduced. And there's just more of a warmth that's given to a lot of the characters, even though he's in this miserable place. And then at the end, where he chooses to reject that route and go back to finish his quest from, his birth or from childhood, it once again reverts back to those shadows and that darkness and that gray and this kind of play of showing this hellish landscape that Iceland can also be. Yeah. It was really
No offense
great.
to anyone from Iceland.
No, because it's stunning. The waterfalls, the springs, the green hills. It was a stunning place. We got to see it all. Without recognizing your brain was doing it, you could feel the difference in tones.
Yeah. I do want to talk about probably the biggest spoiler. Like, literally, this is the end of the movie. Get Out. That does offer to him. He has a path out. He could just stay on this boat, leave with Anya Taylor-Joy, and live a happy life, theoretically. But he says no. He jumps into the water and doesn't come back up to the surface. We were looking for that. He didn't come up. That was weird. And he has a showdown with this man who is his uncle, who's responsible for his father's death and the turn of his mother, who apparently is also an awful person. Nicole Kidman's performance is the best of the movie, in my opinion. Oh my God, the scene with her. But he has that showdown with his uncle. He dies. And narratively, the movie tells you he made the right choice because he's welcomed into Valhalla. The last shots of the movie are him being ascended into Valhalla. I love that. I love that the movie didn't back down. Yeah. And it's like, no. This is Norse mythology. This is this culture. He made the right call by this story. Wow. I love that.
Well, and that's how he wanted to go. And I will say what... they also made some great choices in terms of the shots themselves, like the horse galloping across the skies into Valhalla. Stunning. The scene where we're watching this building that has been shoved with old people and women and children and then lit on fire, and it just sits on this. I think there's a small dolly shot of it either pushing in or pulling out, but we just sit on this shot.
I think it's in because it's trying to make it feel like you're going in.
And we just sit on it and you hear the noises, and it's very impactful, the choices he made in terms of which shots need to be cut quickly and which shots need their moment.
That's, to me, is Robert Edgar's biggest strength as a director. He knows precisely which shots to elongate. And the siege specifically. I mean, when there's this horde of attackers coming into this place, we have that amazing spear catch.
That was seamlessly done.
The editing on that, the CG, whatever they did, fantastic. And then we have the scaling of the wall, the jumping over, the hidden cuts are brilliant.
That scene, because I do want to talk about overall performances, but specifically that scene at the village where they are just, the berserkers are coming in and just destroying and ravaging this.
After the most testosterone-filled campfire ever.
Oh my gosh, so much growling, lots of frothing.
We are bears!
Yeah, but basically, the way you have this moment, and what I loved about his choice of just letting the camera sort of pan, is you're following your character, but your attention is actually on what's going on in the background, and you really get to enjoy the performances by the extras who clearly had a great time, in shooting this because they really give it their all.
I disagree. It looked miserable. They were covered in mud and it was cold. That looked horrible to film.
But I feel like giving it their all in terms of their performance. So it was really great to see everyone engaged with the performance, but also getting their moments, their few snippets to shine. line, you truly got that time. It wasn't so zoomed in on the main character.
I really am excited for you to check out Vivitch and Lighthouse because Edgar's does that a lot, where he won't just have what's in the foreground be where your attention needs to be. He'll have something happen way back here, and then you kind of it allows that world to feel so much more real and pull you in, because you're like, okay, here's where there's something. Like it's just, and that's the whole siege. And then we see, I believe we even see Anya Taylor-Joy at one point in the background just slap someone and get dragged off, but she's not really even in focus. And so if you miss it, that's her introduction, but you don't see that yet. And yet it's a really good character building moment that even while these berserkers all around her, she's still like throwing hands.
Yeah. As you mentioned before, Nicole Kidman's scene at the end, it was like...
Let me set it up real quick if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
So we get the big twist of the movie, which is that Nicole Kidman is actually responsible for his father's death. He does not need to save his mother because she wants to be there. She begged his uncle to do this, and she pretty much tells him, like, no, this is my doing. And then also, like, does some incestuous stuff to him, which is part of the whole him becoming cowed thing, where we see him... I really also want to give credit to Alexander Skarsgård. For such a big guy, he looks so terrified. Yeah. And Nicole Kidman just does a brilliant job of dominating him in that scene. And it's to the point where he runs off, giving me a vibe of like a scared child.
Oh, yeah.
And then just murders her kid on the way out.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay.
But as Kayla's saying, it's Nicole Kidman's performance that just makes that scene probably the best of the film.
While she doesn't have any prosthetics on, and her makeup doesn't, shift in terms of color, the way her face contorts and warps in this sort of disfigurement, because she's so, like, I don't know, it's something in her cheekbones and the way her eyes kind of shrivel down here when she's speaking to him and spitting this venom at him.
It does feel like she's spitting.
Yeah, and the way she speaks but moves her face and utilizes those expressions, it reminds me almost of the rapid shift between Bilbo when he is speaking with Frodo at Rivendell and then when he sees the ring. It's not like a 3D change. It's just her talent as an actress that you see the shift between who we thought she was and who she truly is.
That's a good way. It's like, it's as effective as what they did do with Bilbo's face with CG, but it's just Nicole Kidman's talent.
Acting.
Okay, so closing thoughts. I think it is the weakest of Robert Edgar's 3 films that I've mentioned here in the review, but being the weakest of the 3 is not an insult, and I'd still say it's damn good and certainly worth seeing in cinemas if it's still in by the time I get this out, because this is unfortunately not doing too great at the box office, and I would highly encourage people to try and change that.
Yeah, I have to agree. Definitely worth a watch. I would say go just for the experience. It's not necessarily the most character driven in terms of story because I'm not as connected to them, but I certainly love watching each shitty character go through their storyline. So definitely check it out.
We'll end this by saying, I will avenge you, father.
I will save you, mother.
I will kill you, Fiona. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. You can follow Kayla here. You can follow me there. And have a good one, y'all. Bye.
Bye.